Hey, this is Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the other great podcasts on the network at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, powered by Match Shark. Listener ready? Stand by.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear, a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA matches around the world. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey. IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association, was formed out of the concealed carry movement back in the 1990s. It's based on the founders' desire for a sport based on real-world defensive skills and not just fancy equipment. IDPA matches are a series of stages that are based on realistic defensive scenarios, and they'll test the shooter's skills in gun handling, accuracy, speed, and problem solving. Men and women from around the world compete every week in IDPA matches, and here at Unload and Show Clear, we introduce you to those people. We talk one-on-one, people, not politics. These are not professional athletes. They're everyday men and women, your neighbors, your coworkers, public servants, your kids' teachers, and you're going to meet one of those great people today. And for 2020, Unload and Show Clear is powered by Match Shark. If you watch videos from last year's IDPA World Championship 2019, you will see that shooters had to deal with the discomfort of shooting in sometimes heavy rain. If you were at that match, or if you were with me at the 2019 Arkansas State match, you know how much fun it can be to shoot in the rain, especially heavy rain. Why do I say that? Well, pasting and scoring targets is not fun at all. Not only are you and your equipment soaked, not only are you cold and wet and damp and uncomfortable, but pasting and scoring targets makes your day even that much more fun. You can't see the scoring zones. The pasters and the tape won't stick to the targets. The targets ultimately will disintegrate because they get waterlogged and have to be changed more frequently. Well, contrast that Arkansas State match to the World Championship and compare the targets. There was a big difference. The difference was you had baggies on the Arkansas targets and you had Match Shark covering the World Championship targets. Match Shark's patent-pending target shields keep targets dry even in heavy rain. They're reusable too, so the cost of those shields is quickly recovered by simply patching and reusing them over and over and over again, because you're not shooting the shield, you're shooting the backer that holds the shield to the target stand. Well, once you're done, you just take the things off, slap a little paster on it. There's a tape paster that covers up the holes. Boom, you're set to reuse it over and over and over again. And it makes your staff happier because setup and scoring and tear down are so much easier. It makes your shooters happier because they can see the targets and they don't have to deal with plastic bags. They're designed and manufactured right here in the United States. They are owned and operated by two IDPA shooters themselves, people experienced in match direction and setup. Will and Chris Schmid, whom you've heard on this podcast, they understand the challenges that match staff face when dealing with wet weather. So let them help you run your matches faster and smarter and make it a better experience for your safety officers and your shooters. Visit matchshark.com today and get everything you need to be prepared for your next rainy day match. That's matchshark.com. Visit them today, matchshark.com. Our special guest today is Kimiko Donahue from Tucson, Arizona. Kimiko, welcome to the show. It's great to finally have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little about yourself. Tell us, for those who are living under rocks and don't know anything about you, what do you do for a living there in Tucson?
I'm actually the owner of an insurance agency in Tucson, Arizona. I've been doing insurance for about 12 years, so that's my day job. That's what I do almost all the time.
Okay.
And I also shoot guns, ride motorcycles. I like to keep life interesting because as most people know, insurance is not a super exciting field.
I started to say you liven it up with the guns and the motorcycles.
Yes.
All the things that drive up your insurance rates normally, right?
Exactly.
So I saw in your profile you're originally from California. How did you end up in Arizona?
Yeah. So my parents met in California, got married, and they're both engineers. And I was born, and they wanted to move me and my sister to Arizona just because it was a little, not as much. It wasn't as busy.
Right.
I think they just wanted to get us out of the, crazy California city life. And I'm glad they did, because we've got much more lenient gun laws.
Right.
They know I'd get into that, later in life. But yeah, they moved us out to Arizona. My dad opened up an engineering firm, and I grew up in Tucson.
Very cool. So where did the interest in guns come from?
I didn't know really much about anything about guns through my childhood. I did know a little bit about gun safety just because my parents did a really good job, teaching us, even if it's a play gun, like a Nerf or a sport gun or something like that, don't point it at people.
Right.
So they taught us gun safety, from a very young age. I didn't really get into firearms until after stopping motorcycle racing. That was my thing. After high school, got into the bikes and racing, and had a motorcycle crash on the racetrack in 2014. Hit my head, got concussion, that whole deal, and decided, I should probably find a different hobby. So I was flipping through channels one day, and, I think it was Sportsman Channel, and I saw women shooting free guns. People like Lena Michalek, Becky Yackley, Jessica Hook, girls like that. And I saw them, running around with guns on a timer. And I said, that looks cool. It's racing with guns. I'm going to go buy guns. So that's literally how it happened. I saw it on TV, showed up at the range, knew nothing, knew nobody. I remember my first stage, it was terrible. I didn't know how to load a shotgun, and I probably looked horrendous, but got through it and learned more later.
That's awesome. So how long had you been racing motorcycles?
Let's see. I got my first motorcycle when I was 18. It was just a little Ninja 250, and rode around on the street for a little bit, and you see friends get hurt or worse, and I wanted to get off of the road, because you can't really control that. There's cars, there's buildings, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So someone introduced me to track riding, and that's when I got into, learning the racetrack. And a female racer actually came up to me and said, "Hey, you're kind of good. You should probably look at racing." And that's how I got into it. I just kind of fell into it and loved it and was okay at it. And unfortunately, a rookie mistake is what got me out of it.
Right. So was that something that was this sort of amateur level? Was this sort of a semi-pro kind of thing, or
racing.
Just? Oh, okay.
Yeah, club racing. With the intentions of let's try to graduate up to expert level, which then you can start getting into the more. I think at that point it was AMA, and now it's Moto America, which isn't quite world level, but it's you can travel nationally and compete that way.
So sounds like you've got a bit of a competitive streak in you. Is this something
a little bit? Yeah, it's been something in my blood. I guess my whole life. Set a goal and do whatever it takes to get there.
Very cool. How were you introduced to IDPA?
Well, I started in three-gun, and of course, like most three-gunners, sorry everybody, pistol's usually the weakest skill. Mm-hmm. And mine definitely was. When I first got introduced to IDPA, I shot the targets like three-gun targets and learned very quickly that that's not the way to play that game. So yeah, I was actually introduced by a few people here in Tucson to the IDPA discipline, and eventually got into USPSA as well. But my first introduction to pistol was IDPA.
What do you remember about that? You said you shot IDPA like three gun. What do you remember
Oh,
about
my times were great. I'll tell you.
the raw times
that was
were
so
awesome,
fast,
right?
Absolutely, yeah. But then you notice, you're 5 points down on a target going, this isn't the way to win this.
Right. And there's all these
It didn't help
rules.
that the people I shot with at the time were similar mindset. So it was always, burn it down, go as fast as you can.
Right. Do you remember that first day and what that was like and what you thought of the difference?
I'm actually going to call myself out on this, and I hate to do it on a podcast, but here you go, everybody. I cried.
Oh boy.
I was so frustrated with myself because I am competitive and I want to do well in things that I do, and I remember doing this going, wow, this must really not be for me. But really what it came down to is just knowing the rules and what it takes to do well in that discipline, because they're all different. You got bullseye, you've got USPSA, and they're all very different and focused on different things.
Right. So how did this change you said you thought, well, maybe this isn't for me, but then what changed? How did you change your approach from there? Instead of, leaving IDPA alone and moving on to something else, you worked hard to become now a master in ESP.
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. I think it was first, it wasn't right after that match. I made that same mistake plenty of times after that, going fast and not focusing on zeros. And it wasn't until I met my boyfriend, who happens to be a world champion pistol shooter, and he's the one that taught me, Kimmy, you're focusing on all the wrong things. You need to just focus on shooting zeros. And I remember my first thing was like, well, I'm going to be so slow. He said, just trust me. You've got natural speed. If you focus on zeros, that's what's going to take you to the next level. And I'll tell you what, after I finally wrapped my head around that is what changed the game for sure.
Gotcha. Do you remember the day that finally clicked? Was there a moment at a match when you finally said, aha? Was there a light bulb moment?
I think it's just kind of been acquired throughout the years. I wish I could say it was one moment. It's, even to this day, I can go shoot a match and go, ooh, there might have been a stage that I focused on shooting zeros, but then there'd be the next stage where I'm like, ooh, I can shoot this one really fast. And then you look at your scores afterwards and go, I was focusing on the wrong thing.
Gotcha.
So I think it's still an ongoing learning experience. And you find, that you've built in habits throughout the years too. Like, there's some people that say, oh, I always shoot my first stage crappy, or I can't shoot a long day match. I got to break it up into 2 days. And then they shoot the last few terribly. And you know what? We're all guilty of it. I was guilty of that mindset where I said, oh, I always get the first stage jitters. And for the longest time I did. My first stage was my worst one. And once I got past that and said, no, actually, you know what? My first stage is my favorite stage. And now my first stage is usually my best one because I go in fresh with that, positive mindset.
Gotcha. So learning to throw away those built-in excuses and turning that into a positive.
I think what boggles my mind is, being naturally competitive. And I mean, if any athletes are listening, I'm sure they can relate to this. When you're used to being at least halfway decent at sports, when you get into a sport like shooting or even golf is a great example, I would say the majority of it is mental, and regardless of how skilled you are physically or how athletic you are, a lot of this is all in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I like to quote the old Yogi Berra thing, the 50% of the game is 90% mental or whatever. I can't remember. I've dated myself.
Yeah, whatever that quote is, but that's exactly it. If you've got if you lack on the mindset, it can affect your physical abilities.
Yep.
And that's what I had to wrap my head around because I was never introduced to that philosophy until shooting.
So how did
and now looking at it too, I'm like, dang, if only I thought that way in motorcycles, I would have been so much better.
Well, yeah. So how did that progression happen? That's an interesting point that we've talked about on the show many times. That mental part of the game is usually the hardest for shooters to figure out. You can shoot for years and it never seems to click. And then one day there's a moment or there's there's a match where you figure out, okay, or there's a class or there's a book like Lanny Basham's book, or you take a class from somebody like Elias Frangoulis or like Seeklander, and the mental part of it clicks, and you start to see the stages in a different way. What was the biggest influence for you in terms of figuring out that mental side of the game? Because that's really hard for a lot of new shooters, particularly.
Yeah, and I think it's still an ongoing learning experience. You learn something from each match every time. And the other thing that was I got a lot from the mental management was also at work. I coach a lot of salespeople on my team on how to go into an appointment with the confidence and the positive affirmations, and how much that changes their sales and their numbers. One of the ways I've also heard it is some people develop an alter ego. So you see a lot of celebrities or singers that go on stage and they create almost this persona. You can do the same thing in shooting, where you might personally, maybe you don't have confidence on long distance shots. You create a persona or, create a positive affirmation behind that. You can, now shoot 40 yards one-handed, no problem. It sounds silly. It's actually, Elias will tell you it's almost brainwashing. But, you look at high performers in any industry, athletes, business people, they all have that same thing in common.
Who would have thought that there
we can
would...
get real deep. Yeah. We're going down a whole nother rabbit hole.
Well, who would have thought that there would be a connection between selling insurance and shooting guns? That's fascinating. Yeah,
there really is. It's just, mental management it's applied to, everything.
Right.
Relationships, I'm sure we can relate it to that somehow. Really anything that you want to change about yourself that you don't like, you've got the power to do that.
How long after those first few matches of running and gunning and outrunning your shooting before you decided, all right, I'm ready to shoot a sanctioned match?
That was actually my first experience.
What?
I shot, I think it was a Glock match, was my first pistol match, and my first big 3-gun match was Babes with Bullets with Deb Ferns and Kay Michalek over at the Michalek Ranch. So my first big experience with 3-gun was a big match with several stages that I've have no idea what I'm doing, and it was scary. And I just kind of jumped into it. I think that's really the way to. That's just how I do everything. Maybe it's not right, but immerse yourself.
That can get expensive with the match fees.
It did.
How about IDPA? What was your first sanctioned match in IDPA?
I believe it was one of the New Mexico matches. I want to say it was a New Mexico state match.
Okay.
I classified, I believe, as marksman, and I remember going, "Oh man," and jumped in and got bumped immediately to sharpshooter, and then I stayed at sharpshooter, I think, for a good year or two. And I remember that was really frustrating, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, whether you're stuck in expert, or in USPSA you're stuck in A class and you want to bump to master. It's just changing your mindset and practicing the right things. Because I know my issue was I didn't practice. So when I did practice, I had to make sure I was being really efficient about it. And that's what, my calendar is stupid. It's so time blocked, and when it comes to shooting, I had to, okay, cool, I've got 30 minutes to do this. I can, either run to the range or Elias will tell you, you don't have to do a whole bunch of live fire. It's a lot of dry fire, and but just being efficient with what you're practicing. So the thing that helped me bump to master was just focusing on being accurate, because that's the name of the game in IDPA. You obviously you want to shoot zeros as fast as you possibly can, but if you're someone that's naturally speedy and you focus on accuracy, that's going to be a game changer. And I've seen that with other people, at our local range too, that are just naturally speedy people. But the second they were told, shoot zeros or focus on being accurate, you'll start seeing their names at the top of the list.
Right. So how was that? How was your performance at that first sanctioned match, at the New Mexico match?
Oh, terrible.
Okay.
I ended up getting a match bump, but compared to what I knew I could do, I was, so many points down and procedurals. Because remember, I'm coming from a 3-gun, thing. So, and this was back before IDPA had introduced fault lines.
Right.
So it was subjective to if you're behind cover or not. And
right.
I probably had more procedurals on that day than I have my whole shooting hobby.
Yep. Fault lines, greatest rule change that IDPA has ever made.
Yeah, and for me, I'm really short. I'm like 5'1.5" ish, and for someone to call cover on me, I'm looking at them like, are you kidding? Like, there's not much sticking out here. But I remember that was frustrating. I'm sure a lot of other people felt that way. And the fault lines are great because shooting USPSA and 3-gun, that's what I was used to, so it was easy to transfer over to that.
Yeah, that was a huge frustration for years, having go from one state to another and have one group of SOs call cover completely differently from the previous match you were at, or even from one stage to another. Yeah,
it keeps it consistent, and that way you can focus on shooting and not worry about is a part of my body sticking out too much.
Right. So you made master this year in January, right?
I think that's when it was.
I
think it was at the New Mexico Scorcher last year. Maybe that's when I renewed my membership. Sorry, guys. But I believe I got my master bump the New Mexico Scorcher last year.
Very cool. So tell us about that day and the journey from, like you said, starting out as marksman, jumping, first sanctioned match straight into sharpshooter with a bump, and then swimming for a couple of years in that pool, which is challenging, and then moving up to expert, getting the bump to master. That's something that a lot of us just haven't gotten there.
I think more than anything, it was that final sigh of relief.
Right.
Yes, I made it. It also goes back into, positive affirmations and goal planning. I think, when I was shooting my IDPA, I was like, okay, I really want to go for my, division bump, or, you set this goal, but sometimes it's not big enough. So if you set a pretty lofty goal, like, hey, I'm going to win ESP overall, and then you happen to get a match bump after that, you set a higher goal, and even if you fall a little short of it, you're still happy with the results. In a lot of the IDPA matches, if he listens to this, Jay Kohler,
yep, and
I would go back and forth quite a bit. We were always a few seconds off of each other, so about every other match, it was, me and him, and this one I finally got I think we both got our bump at this match, and then I got him back at a USPSA match. But yeah, that was kind of the fun part, is we were really, watching each other's scores. And I believe Mandy Bachman got High Lady that year, and that was obviously, another thing that I wanted to win, and it was a pretty damn close match on that one. But I set my sights on, I want to win ESP overall,
right?
And then however the chips fall, that's how they fall.
Gotcha. Yeah, Jay Kohler and Mandy are both former guests on the show.
And they're both amazing people.
Yes.
I love both of them.
Yes. So you've talked about it sounds like you have a super busy life. So, and you mentioned practice earlier, and we've had various and sundry approaches to practice expressed on the show in the 150 episodes so far. How do you balance the need to practice with all the other things, with the craziness in your life? There's some people who don't have a whole lot going on and they just don't practice. They don't find the time. There's others who have crazy busy lives like you, who also, they're just like, I just don't have the time. And they don't make the time. What's the key to finding the time, or to making that time to improve your skills when you have a really busy life?
This is actually probably one of my favorite questions, because I coach on it in the insurance industry.
Well, here we go again with the insurance and guns thing.
Yeah, calendaring everything is important. I would say, so for me, I don't practice nearly as much as I used to, and definitely not as much as I should. I do a lot of visualization. I practice when I can. I think for people that want to get to a certain level, it's blocking time out and staying consistent to it. And everybody has different theories about how to practice, whether it's live fire or dry fire. Obviously, dry fire is going to help you with the fundamentals, and those are huge. If you've got a crappy reload, that's going to hurt you, throughout 14 stages in a match. So I think, dry fire is where you really practice the fundamentals, and then live fire is to practice, managing recoil, which I need a lot of practice of, because, I'm small and I didn't understand how to lock my wrists at the time. As far as how to get practice in, if you have a goal and you want to make it happen, then you're going to do everything it takes to get there. I understand being busy, and, I have an 11-year-old daughter. I own a business. Life happens, but my favorite part about this is people ask, well, how do you balance it? I don't believe there's ever going to be a balance. I call it, instead of a work-life balance, I always call it the work-life blend, because there might be times where, you have a meeting in the morning. Oh, I have 30 minutes here. I can, pick up the gun for a little bit, dry fire, do a couple reloads, back to another meeting. Or, people that are parents, maybe you're stay-at-home parents, like, oh, I got to take the kids to karate, but I've got a little bit of time to squeeze, some practice in here. I think if you can, even if you practice for, even 5 minutes a day, that's more than most people do. So, any little bit helps. It's just being efficient in your practice and having a very clear goal of what you want to accomplish. And, there's a lot of coaches out there. If you don't, you're not sure what to practice. Obviously I'm going to stand up for Elias and, say take one of his classes, or even just message him on Facebook or Instagram, and he can help you out with, designing a plan. Even if you are someone that's really good at shooting, there's always room for improvement, and, reach out to your peers, and sometimes having a second set of eyes, watch your videos or watch what you're doing, can pick up on something that you might not have seen.
All right. We've discovered the intersection between insurance sales and shooting guns. Where's the
time blocking and mental management?
Where does how does your previous career as racing motorcycles, how has that influenced your career shooting guns?
That I find a lot of similarities, especially with how important it is to use your eyes. So in shooting, where, you're looking at a target, you're, watching the sights go up and down, and you're looking to the next target, but you're always having, all the targets kind of in your vision. You might not just be focused on one. It's the same thing in racing. You're going through a corner, but you're looking to the next corner. And also movement, efficiency and movement goes to both. So, just like in shooting, it's, how quickly can you get your gun up in the next position? In motorcycle racing, it was how quickly can you pick the bike up out of the corner so you can get on the gas quicker? So there's a lot of similarities, and it's funny because when I was thinking about shooting, that that's the things that would come into my head is, in racing, this is what we did. And it helped wrap my mind around something new, because I knew nothing about guns and shooting, and like I didn't even know how to clean my gun until maybe 1 or 2 years in. Someone said, when's the last time you cleaned your gun? I'm like, what? You have to clean it?
Well, you shoot ESP. What were you shooting that you didn't clean for 2 years?
A Glock 34. I didn't.
Perfect.
But
you don't need to clean it.
I shoot a Springfield 1911. That thing needs to be cleaned.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, love it. It runs, knocking on wood as I say this, runs flawlessly as long as you keep it clean. Yeah, the Glocks you can throw in dirt, but the metal guns are a little pickier.
Little different. Yep. What's the strangest, worst, or funniest thing that ever happened to you at an IDPA match?
Oh gosh. Probably the day that I reminded myself I should probably read the damn rule book. It was actually at, you know what? It was at the sports show where I got my master bump. I'm pretty sure it was this one. If not, maybe it was the one before, but there was a stage where it said you needed to stow all your mags and, then you can continue shooting. Well, I thought, I only need one mag to shoot with, so I'll just grab one. And I don't remember why I thought that was okay, but I ended up getting a procedural, and it cost me the stage win. And I just kicked myself in the butt. So anyone listening, read the rule book. It'll help. But yeah, if a stage description says you got to stow all mags, you got to stow all your mags, even.
So you just grabbed one and left the other one behind?
Yeah, I don't know why I thought that was okay. I don't have any really funny stories I can think of, but I just know that one sucked, and I get reminded of it to this day. So,
what is next for you? What is it? What is your next goal now that you've gotten to master in ESP? I
want a division win.
Okay.
That's something I've been going after, and I think I can do it. I need to put in the work, plain and simple. Right. And I am not afraid to tell people that before I really didn't put in the work like I should have. I think because I don't want to say I didn't have a clear goal, but I didn't have a clear plan on how to get there.
Okay.
I think I was just kind of winging it. But that's the next. I'd like a division win.
So what is it, to round things out here, what is it about IDPA that keeps you coming back to it? Why do you love the sport when there are so many other things that you could spend more time on and that are less rule book intensive and kind of more, as I said?
It's a fun question because I get it a lot, and it's usually from USPSA shooters.
Right.
People ask me, Kimmy, why do you like IDPA? There's so many rules. You got to wear this vest and, stuff like that. It was the first pistol discipline that I took on. But I guess it's just one I keep going back to. But I enjoy it because it does force you to focus on accuracy. And, the reloads are different. You can still make it fast paced. And honestly, too, the people at the range are great. I guess, yeah, the way to answer that is I like the people, and that's what I started with. Keep coming back to it.
Very cool. Well, Kimmy, thank you so much.
And I think the rules, people say, there's too many rules. It is what you make of it,
Yeah.
Like I said, I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but I'm going for it. I never read the rule book. I just came out and shot. So when people say, there's all these rules, I'm like, really? What rules?
What rules?
Yeah, I showed them some procedurals, but, I eventually learned that. But, yeah, rules. I mean,
that's
just go have fun. It's still shooting.
That's right. Learn the rules 3 seconds at a time. It's easy.
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. Well, Kimmy, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it, and I hope I get a chance to meet you on the range down the road.
Absolutely. I'll be out more, hopefully, once everything, like you said, starts opening up. And
yes.
whatever the word normal means anymore.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you to our guest for coming on the show. And thank you to our awesome sponsor, Match Shark, for making this entire season possible. If you would, please take a minute to check out our website, Unload Podcast. Lots of cool previous episodes are there, links to all sorts of great information. Just check out the guest list as well. Join the Facebook group too if you want to connect with other fans and get updates on the latest news. You can find that at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of cool videos there at unloadpodcast.com/YouTube. And if you'd like to support the show personally, consider becoming a patron, just $1 a month at patreon.com/unload. And for your support, I'll send you out a sticker and you'll have my undying gratitude for your help. If you or someone you know would make an interesting guest for a future episode, you can contact me at unloadpodcast.com. Just go to the contact button in the menu at the top of the page and send me a message. Or you can send me an email at Lloyd, LLOYD, at unloadpodcast.com. Tune in again next Thursday for another episode of Unload and Show Clear, powered by Match Shark. We are a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Be sure to check out all of the other pro-freedom podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.